Derek Hanson, welcome to the WP Minute.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Matt.
I've seen you pop up on a lot of live streams. We've chatted only in live streams so far, and of course our LinkedIn direct messages, going back and forth to set this recording up. You're a technical account manager at Automattic. I want to talk about that, what the day in the life looks like for you. You also have been creating a lot more content lately at derekhanson.blog. I think you're going to start getting maybe into YouTube, your newsletter, and blogging, where we're going to unpack all of that.
Yeah.
I want to lead in with one of my hot topics, which I think I commented on one of your LinkedIn posts or articles, that I feel like there's a lot of automaticians as of late who are creating content. And part of my, broader view of analyzing Automattic and in the industry is, hey, maybe there's like this initiative internally at Automattic that folks are like, it'd be great if you all were content marketers, because I button that up against something like, hey, there's hot topics. Maybe we'll talk about it today. Wix, Squarespace, these juggernauts in the ad and marketing space, really pumping lots of money. And my gut feeling was, well, maybe the automaticians love the software so much that they could be, in air quotes, they could be the marketers by using the product and publishing content and leveraging WordPress as it is. Long way of getting to, is there an internal initiative for automaticians to create content? And if not, what's the deal? There's so many of you doing it lately.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's no official internal initiative, other than if you saw one of Matt's recent blogs, maybe a few months back, about the cards that automaticians get of be the host, help the hosts, and then neutral. And where I sit firmly with my team as a TAM with the special projects team, we're in the help the host category, where it's the idea of just making WordPress better for everybody. And some of that is just sharing more what you do publicly. And I think every automatician, there's lots of people who are gifted writers, and you might find some of their content around with, personal newsletters. Something that I think maybe everybody's behind on is that YouTube side of things, because creating video content is a hard task, as you all know, I'm sure, which is why, we'll get into this. I'm slow to get into it because it's time consuming, and not everybody has an affinity towards public facing communication like that either. As I shared with you privately, I have a pretty decent background in that from previous jobs and my time working at the university I used to be a part of. So I think people, tend to follow the Automattic creed to just, share what you do openly, and work out in the open and just give back to WordPress. And so that's what I've taken on just a little bit personally as like a side quest, knowing that it's going to better WordPress, and then just create a better understanding of what we're doing.
Yeah, I like, there's Mike from the Jetpack team, whom I've spoken to a lot one-on-one, and I know he is, doing the whole YouTube thing. I mean, he's doing the YouTube thing for Jetpack, but I know he has his own his own blog and entrepreneurship initiatives that he's publishing and broadcasting, which is cool. Ann McCarthy, I think, is doing a fantastic, unbiased, middle of the road meeting the YouTubers and trying to, have us sort of all understand where this whole thing is going. It's great to hear, because obviously, and we don't have to get I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this, but I still think Automattic is the best steward for open source WordPress, and having a fleet of automaticians using the product, I think, is going to make this whole experience better. It's a battleship trying to turn, or an aircraft carrier trying to turn in a tight spot. A lot of folks want things to get better, faster, pressures from competition, and we'll talk about that from your perspective. But I think it's great that the automaticians are using it and are really, publishing their own stuff with it. It's the best way to learn. It's how I learn with Gravity Forms. Right? Every day I'm trying something new, and I'm like, this doesn't work out for the average end user like me. How can we make it better? So I think it's a great thing. What is a day in the life as a technical account manager, and what product specifically? You said special products or special teams. What product specifically do you work with?
Yeah, so the Automattic special projects team, which I dropped you a link right before the chat, so you could share that out. You can see some of the work we do, but we partner with Friends of Automattic, and we build and launch websites. We offer a concierge service for Friends of Automattic, and our initiative really is to do what you're saying, is to use the software, use WordPress. We aim to use as many Automattic products as possible to contribute back in lots of different ways, whether that's creating custom bespoke themes, cool new plugins or features for the block editor, or just really custom solutions. And the idea is that the day in the life of what we're doing is we're getting that hands-on experience and passing that feedback back into the different products at Automattic, even external third-party products. Gravity Forms is something that we still have sites using a lot because of how well developed and long-standing and powerful it's been. And that's really our aim and our initiative. We spend a lot of time also in just the Gutenberg GitHub repository. And there's quite a few of our developers on our team that you'll see listed in the contributors to releases based on the work we do. So as a TAM, the day in the life is interacting and interfacing with the people that we work with. So some of the sites in our catalog, I was fortunate to be a part of. Very proud of the work that we do. I think we produce a great showcase of WordPress just out into the community to show what it can do.
How do you define a friend of Automattic?
Friend of Automattic, a lot of times is a friend of Matt. So he's sending people our direction to get help with their website, whether that's they're already on WordPress and they need a facelift, or they're coming from other platforms, which is usually a great case study to see what we can do. Which the data liberation project is something that I think we're really keen to help contribute to figure out how can we make that seamless transition to and from other platforms from WordPress.
I've often seen, as I'm sure most folks watching the show have seen as well, like I've seen him interact with random folks on Twitter or X, saying, hey, my site here on Shopify is terrible, or it's too expensive, or and if it's sort of like a notable brand, or maybe somebody in his inner or third degree of circles, he might say something like, hey, hop over to WordPress, we'll help you. I assume that's when you get the bat signal up in the sky and then you swoop in to say, I'll help. Now, roughly, if that's correct, how do you then facilitate, hey, this is a WordPress.com person, or maybe this is a VIP person, and you kind of help facilitate that? Like, do you analyze as your that daily task? Do you help analyze that and make the assessment for which product, Pressable even, to choose?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a lot of our sites are on Pressable and launching more on WordPress.com, and there's a select few that go to VIP. Thankfully, I am unburdened of maybe a lot of those decisions, especially like if something's going to go to VIP, just in my role as a TAM. But usually when we're spinning up projects and I'm working with the partner, I will see if and have a pretty good influence on if something should be like WordPress.com or on Pressable. And some projects we're working on right now are coming to WordPress.com to take full advantage of some of those Jetpack integrated features like newsletter, like you were mentioning, Mike is sharing a lot more of. And yeah, like I said, it's just helping to understand really the needs of and goals of the partner, not as much as like, hey, let's make sure we're, benefiting our platforms. It's we're providing the best experience with WordPress as we can for each partner we work with.
Do you have a favorite, I guess, without revealing who the customer is if you don't want to, but was there a favorite sort of, I don't know, win from Matt doing something like that? Like somebody you migrated from Wix and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this on Wix. Or is there a favorite project or conversion that you've been a part of through this program?
Yeah. What really drew me to applying for the role was seeing like the description of the job and getting to build sites for people. And specifically, I've had a chance to work with a lot of nonprofits, which is, a lot of my background helped contribute to that in my previous roles. And the ones I am most proud of are actually featured on our site. So you can share those and people can go click on them. And one of the best ones was endthebacklog.org, which won a Webby Award because of the work that we did. And that was a Drupal migration. And you want to talk about a hard task. It's trying to figure out how to move from Drupal to WordPress. And, fortunately, we have such a group of talented people to solve some of these things. And so I was really excited about that one. And, interfacing and working with the partners is, just such a pleasure. I enjoy that side of the things a lot, getting to chat with them and hear their goals and help them accomplish, the mission of their either individual or organization. And the backlog is one of my favorite ones. A more recent one I was really, really excited about was interaction design, ixda.org. Because we really started to move into the full site editing experience a lot more. That's almost our default, but and the backlog is a great classic theme experience, and interaction design is a great block theme experience with a lot of really cool features, including a massive video library for all of their past events and conferences.
From where you stand and observe the data liberation project, I mean, you mentioned that, man, imagine trying to move from Drupal to WordPress. No, I can't imagine. I used to be, that's how I got started in this whole web world, was really deep in Drupal way back in the day, Drupal 4 into 5 and then 6. And 6 is when I actually had discovered WordPress. But from your perspective, is that why data liberation seems a little bit slower? And I want to try to unpack it, if you can, if you have a perspective on it. A lot of folks that I've been talking to, a lot of newer folks coming into the community, they don't really understand like how this whole thing kind of works, where here's a broad vision from Matt, and perhaps I don't even know. I don't claim to know the answers, but here's this broad vision from Matt. While it's not a direct task or like facilitated project, it is hopeful from his vision that we need this data liberation thing, and then please go out and build it. And there's no deadline, timeline, no project manager around it, not yet anyway. But when that sort of broad vision is put out with high complexity, like if you looked at Drupal and probably even Wix and Squarespace, like how do you get this data? How much data are we transferring over? Is it just pages, posts? Like what other data do these CMSs hold? Like, do you think it's that complexity that data liberation is, maybe I'll say struggling is the first word that comes to my head, but slow to start? Something else? Like, what's your thoughts on like getting the data liberation moving?
Yeah, I think it is the complexity and maybe just the interest in devoting the time to it. So having been a part of, quite a few of these types of migrations, and then even back when I was like doing this on my own between different types of CMSs and not even WordPress, there's so many nuances to unpack about each platform to figure out how you need to map the content into your new space. And I think one thing that maybe is a little challenging from a content architecture side of things is a lot of times when you're moving a site to a new one is you're actually taking that opportunity to revamp not just the design, but maybe the organization of it. So maybe you have like a set of pages that you'd prefer to become custom post types. Maybe you have a set of custom post types that would fit better as default posts with maybe just different templates and formats. And that, I think, presents such a unique challenge because there's so much planning involved on a per site basis that it's not as simple as like click, move my site from this platform to WordPress, or move my WordPress, site to this other WordPress environment, because I think there's so many changes that are taking place from a content perspective that really fits on, just like I said, just such a case by case basis. It's not really one-to-one. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is it takes so much time to figure out for your individual site what the best process is, that it's not necessarily going to overlap on the next, site that somebody wants to move. I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
realizing that you can't speak for the whole company and your Automattic colleagues, what's the temperature in the room for Automattic when they sort of, this is the way that I see it, and maybe you all see it differently. I'm often very, critical of like decisions of Matt, but I am right behind him with his definition of open source WordPress, open web, like WordPress as the publishing platform first and foremost, at least as of right now. Like there's a lot of stuff. And then I am critical on maybe some of the decision making, how it impacts individuals in the space. Having said all that, I don't really see the work that all automaticians do, and Rich, and they are obviously much more public, and maybe that's just part of their roles. But I'm curious to understand like what the temperature in the room is for you all, or maybe at least from your perspective, when you see the WordPress.org community. Automattic is just doing this. Automattic is just this blanket statement. Automattic is just doing that. Automattic is making these decisions just for them. I don't buy that. I don't even buy that Matt's doing it for the benefit of WordPress.com. But what's the temperature in the room? Do you feel disassociated with the .org community because you are in Automattic? Mm-hmm. How do you all think about that, if anything? Like, do you regularly meet about that? I would imagine there'd be one psychologist dedicated to this at Automattic. Be like, look, don't listen to this. But what's your thoughts on that temperature?
I guess I really just speak to that personally, maybe that, Automattic was a job that I used to maybe dream about one day when I was early on in WordPress, but I just really didn't know what I was doing yet. But I was like, this looks like it would be, the best of the best, working on WordPress. And I feel like, like our team specifically, I feel like I get to work on an all-star team of WordPress users. And the more I've been with Automattic, the more I just see the same conversations that you've noted and seen over the years. And I think it's just like a real misconception that everything that's trying to happen is maybe for the benefit of Automattic, when really I think we're all after the same thing. We're trying to benefit and grow WordPress. And I think you've done a really great job of communicating that to your audience, which is why I've really enjoyed, watching and listening to your shows. So I think that maybe the temperature of the room, like myself personally, is like it's hard to navigate the negative sentiment a little bit. I spend probably more time in like the broader .org community than maybe most automaticians, like I said, because it's a tough space to interact with on a daily or weekly basis, because you have to sort of like have that, multi persona, I guess is one way to think about it. And so I try to be really conscious about, jumping into conversations to not, be defensive, but also be open and listening. I think that's why Ann has done such a tremendous job, which you were a part of that last YouTuber Uniting WordPress, and even back with the FSC outreach program. I think sitting back and listening to the people who use WordPress on a daily basis is one of the things I try to do on a more consistent basis, which is why it's like, well, I'm having a hard time jumping into creating the content because I'm still trying to just be in listening mode and hear, what people think and what the perspectives are, because WordPress services too many different users, which is what makes things extremely challenging to know from a vision standpoint, like what the best path is. And I'm far removed from, what that is. So I try to just stay sort of within what I know and where I can contribute. And I think that's the best that we can do. And I feel like, Automattic's not the only organization like that. WP Engine and 10up, I think, do a fantastic job of, supporting WordPress as the project itself. And it'd be nice to see maybe the perspective, of Automattic to shift a little bit in a more positive light, like some of these other, agencies and hosts that are also, we're all after the same thing, just to make WordPress better for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to get into it, but I think obviously the tricky thing is just the brand of WordPress is mixed, right? So
Yeah.
immediately, it's going to be a very difficult debate or discussion, especially from the uninitiated that come into the space, or the newbies that come into the space, and they just as you would, like, if you knew nothing and you were like, oh, wait, these guys are charging for WordPress, but there's free WordPress over here, and they want me to make this better, but they're making it better over there, and they're charging money. Like that initial, like that super like tip of the iceberg thing that people come into the space that just don't know.
Yeah.
It's very easy to fall into that. And hey, that's the muddy area of the branding of WordPress. Let's talk about Derek, the creator. What are your goals as a creator? Do you even like that word? A content creator, podcaster, blogger, newsletter writer, YouTuber? Like, what do you label yourself if you do? And what's the vision for the content that you're putting out?
So I think the vision is, I've always had an affinity to be in like teaching mode. And, that was my previous pathway. Like, I'm going to be a professor and teach communication. And I had an opportunity to be a part of building a multi-site WordPress e-portfolio initiative at the university. So that's how I got started in WordPress. And I really gravitated into that. And I was teaching WordPress to professors and students, and other colleagues. And I think that's, what I'm really looking to do, is just bring that sort of teaching experience and sharing, how to do things. But I think also my other background is in rhetoric, and I like to look at strategy for website projects, and maybe not even as much the technical side of things. So I think the conversation around what it means to have a website is probably something I feel like I want to bring more into the conversations, and less of the like, here's how you push buttons to do things and recreate stuff, which I think I want to do some of that. I want to show like, okay, this is how you accomplish a goal. This is, aspirational. Like, here's an amazing site. Let's see if we can redo it, rebuild it. But then find ways to bring sort of the experience of understanding the before you make a website part. And I think that's maybe a missing component. I hear a lot of conversations about like users and what that means. And I think that's a whole nother skill set that is not about like, here's how you make a website. It's here's how you think about who you're making your website for, which I think is part of the conversation that was just had with Ann about who is WordPress for and the philosophy. And, that became like a point of, major conversation in that previous call. And that's where I'm leaning towards a little bit, is trying to define like what a user really is, because they're so vast and so varied. And the people that, we interact with on a daily basis, and you do certainly as WordPress creators or content creators, your audience is very similar people building websites for other people. And, there's a whole host of people that are entering, like you said, it's confusing to get into WordPress for some people because they don't know the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. But then also like, GoDaddy or Hostinger and, all the other platforms that are WordPress that you might not actually know are WordPress. And there's even niches. I was a part of a church website building platform that was all WordPress, but it was their white label take on it. So it was a completely unique and different experience. So nobody really knew who was coming in, like, because the goal is I need a website for my church, right? Nobody's like, I want to use WordPress. And I think maybe that's where, stepping back and coming more from a high level, I think that's what I'm hoping to bring to people.
This was a debate that Mark Szymanski and I had, very short debate. When we analyze a lot of the vocal folks that are, web professionals building websites, looking for, an improved site building experience, advanced workflows, et cetera, et cetera. Kevin Geary comes to mind. There's a very opinionated and strong approach on, of course, the evolution of WordPress, but he's obviously a very skilled CSS person, has Automattic CSS. I say, hey, this is great that you're that passionate about it, but we're banging on the wrong drum because, in my opinion, the essence of WordPress is for publishing words as an individual on the web. Yes, you can build a website from it, because that's like, when I say a website, I mean like a traditional like homepage, pages, business, etc. Not that you couldn't do that as a blogger, but traditionally, publishing words is a stream of blog posts, let's say. I think that the essence of it is, again, publishing those words. And I think one of the smarter things that Automattic could do, or Matt could do, to preserve that and maybe make it more visible, this is just a theory crafting here, you let me know what your thoughts are, is to be able to combat against social media, disappearing content that's, you're putting out content into all these social platforms and they're just monetizing it, throwing into an algo, serving you ads, selling your data. WordPress could just have a free, I know they have the free domains like the subdomains, but to flip it from a vanity perspective, like you could get a free wp.com/Matt Medeiros, and that could be my blog, right? Shift that perspective on what publishing is, and how folks can access it. And even it's like a vanilla WordPress install that you can't change the theme, and it's just for posting. Like you log in, and it's just posting blog posts, just to get people to realize, oh yeah, like this is like logging into Twitter or logging into Facebook and making a post, but you own it. And then you get to share that natural progression. This is a long, convoluted way of getting to, like, I think the essence of WordPress is for publishing words that then makes this natural evolution into building a website as one progresses on the web with either their identity or their career. And that's why we have what we have with WordPress. True, false, something in between. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you align with a vision that I've had for a while, just like, personally, that one thing that I've spent more time looking at is Substack, because a lot of writers outgrow Substack and then they're ready for something like WordPress. But there's that entry point, which I think you just spoke to. It's like, I just log in and I write what I want, and it's published and it's out there. And I think that's something that, if you've gone through any of the WordPress.com, onboarding flows, I think there's something to, work people into that direction. And I think what you brought up is a really interesting and unique use case. But something I think that does align with the vision of also data liberation. There's a series right now of the Fediverse files on YouTube for WordPress.com. And that concept of WordPress being your hub and the spoke going out to other platforms, where, that's what I've been doing a lot with my blog. I'm writing on my blog on WordPress and it's auto publishing to LinkedIn. So I get to own my content where I want to own it, but I can have it go out to the other, areas and have the conversations where you want to. And I think that concept is there, and maybe it's just a matter of reimagining it to have a more curated experience and like quicker and easier pathway to get into the publishing, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Like, democratize publishing, that's like the thing that I'm always coming back to, is like one of the best missions that you can think of, especially coming from an academic background where there's so many gatekeepers to publishing content that, if you want to be in a free thought, society and space, WordPress is one of the leading ways to kind of combat that.
Yeah, I don't know of any other way. I mean, I know of all like the other CMSs, but I mean, just like from a pure, I want to be a blogger and get words out. I don't know anything better than WordPress, obviously, but I've been doing it for nearly 20 years. And the WP Minute happily runs the Activity Pub plugin, right? So nice. that helps publish content to Mastodon. But I would love. I have comments disabled. Just get into the weeds, but I have comments disabled just because largely I don't want to deal with like spam comments and stuff like that. But that ability to have like your content going out to all of these different social platforms. Now, of course, they all have to support it, but if you have like a network like Mastodon, folks could just comment where they are, and that comment would show up on my blog post.
Yeah.
You know, if they're in an activity at pub enabled space, and I spend a lot of time in the open source podcasting space as well with Podcasting 2.0. Activity Pub is huge there. There's lots of apps making strides. Pocket Cast, we would love to have Activity Pub enabled, you know, for the other division of Automattic. That would be really great. You mentioned Substack, and you said that a lot of folks sort of outgrow that platform, and largely, just so as people are listening, like, why do they outgrow that stack? Probably because they hit some kind of limitation. Like once your air quotes business is moving with Substack, you start to realize like, oh, I'd love to actually control the experience now. Like I'd love to have a landing page or these other product pages, and I need to do my things that to really accelerate this business, and that's where those platforms really cap out.
Yeah.
I have a paid WordPress.com account, thepodcastsetup.com, where I analyze the podcast industry just like I do with the WP Minute. And I came from Ghost, and I originally, when I started this concept of the podcast setup, because originally I was like, I'll just spin up a WordPress site. It's like, no, I personally want to branch out and try something else.
Yeah.
And just like you said about Substack, Ghost is pretty great. Another open source platform. I was on their hosted version.
Yeah.
But man, you really hit that, like, as much as we, myself included, really criticize the UI and UX of Gutenberg and WordPress and like navigation systems, you can't even, that doesn't even exist in Ghost land, right?
Yeah.
Like when I'm in Ghost land, I was like, oh yeah, like I just want to put a call to action button, or there's a call to action button on this theme. Let me just go change it. Wait, I don't have access to it. Like there's no site editor. You know, as painful as it might be here, I don't even get that on Ghost. And now I'm reading, you know, cracking open a code editor, running a local version, and committing it to. I don't have time for it. I could figure it out. I certainly don't have time for it. And those were the limitations I really started to bump up against with Ghost. And then I went to WordPress.com, because then I was like, I want to try the WordPress.com experience. So this is a whole long way of getting to what's it like for Derek when you're publishing content and you want features. Because what I'm found as somebody who publishes that newsletter for podcasting on .com, it is just still vanilla WordPress. And that experience of a Substack and a Ghost is what is missing for that demographic of user, for that type of user. Like what I liked about Ghost is I could log in, hey, there's my newsletter. Like immediately you just see newsletter subscribers going up and to the right, income coming in from, you know, donations and membership plans. Like the experience is just in your face. You're a writer, a newsletter publisher, and this is the experience. WordPress.com is, here's the WordPress dashboard, find the stuff. And I'm like, and also sign up for this free domain. I don't need a free domain. I have a domain already. Let's get that out of there. But where's that experience? So how do you relay those same kind of pain points, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're speaking to just the WordPress admin experience, right? Which is just a big conversation and has been for a long time. But it seems to really be picking up more steam. And I think I take the approach just every other WordPress user does, which you demonstrated. You submitted a GitHub issue to Gutenberg, and Brian Cords picked it up, submitted a PR, it got into a release. And I did the same thing just this past week. I want to be able to upload a featured image to categories and tags. And I'm like, I searched around the Gutenberg repo. I didn't see anything, no conversations. So I'm like, I'm going to create an issue with this vision and let the community, you know, figure it out from there. And I think that's, you know, typically what I try to do. You know, maybe there's like the insider side of things where, you know, having the benefit of being within Automattic and then talking to the product teams, you know, like Jetpack and WordPress.com, who are building the newsletter features. You know, that's where we'll get maybe a little bit more like, you know, into the like insider side of things that I don't want to go into those at all, but I give feedback, and because we're using it just in the same way you are. So it's not necessarily a guarantee that anything's going to be picked up. But I think what you're speaking to is what over time has been addressed by the newsletter sort of as a product for Jetpack um, and WordPress.com with the release of the letter theme, and then some of the new features that are, showing up in there for like, the pop-up subscribe modal and the paywall block. So I think it's all trending in the direction that you're asking. But the admin experience is a totally different thing to unlock, right? Because you have to be able to fit so much in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know it. I know we're moving towards new admin experience, which I've showcased on the channel before about like posts and pages.
Yeah.
And it's going to escape me right now, but I thought there was a whole initiative to make the admin experience a lot more modular, unless that was more pie in the sky. But I don't know. And the admin experience is something that I thought would have been tackled by this point, like 2024. Like when we were complaining about it in 2018.
Yeah.
I was like, well, by 2025 or 4, we'll have something new. Like we should be there. And, here we are, still not there, because I think that's where you really get to unlock those onboarding experiences that a lot of folks complain about, or that are sorely needed, because then you can onboard. I'm an e-commerce store. I'm a blogger. I'm a newsletter publisher. And I just want to get to that. And I only want to see that. Right. And I think that's how you can win against the social media game to a degree. If it was just super slimmed down and you say, hey man, you own this, like this is your bucket of stuff on the web, right? You have your bucket of stuff over on TikTok, but it goes away. Yeah. And you can't do anything with it. But you have your bucket of stuff over here under your own domain or wp.com/whatever, and you own it. And that I think helps, trend that whole, owning content and then leveling up your website in the future. I don't know.
I think that's the most challenging part of just like WordPress from a philosophy standpoint, right? I think Aaron was really alluding to that on the call that we all had with Anne, is that what is the version of WordPress that is the foundation that other people can innovate on top of, right? And I think that's the tension, is how does WordPress allow for innovation and for people to create experiences and benefit from them in a really positive and meaningful way. I think, Mike McAllister with Ollie Pro and that, curated onboarding experience that he's built into that theme is incredible. And I think if, WordPress, takes that on, then you lose that type of innovation where people can create, all kinds of unique experiences, like you said, like, I podcast, there might be a totally different version of WordPress that a host might want to bring, to the table to offer out to a real, interesting niche. So I think that's where I try to like step back and look at WordPress from, my outsider perspective, is how do you balance bringing things into core and allowing for innovation or for people to grow, their own business and provide services to others.
On your recent blog post at derekhanson.blog, recent notes on what I'm working on, you said you hint at there's a facelift coming, and that you'll break it down. What give us a hint? Like, are you choosing a new theme, or can you talk about it? Like, what are the hints that you got going on?
One of my longer posts on my blog and like earlier ones is me actually building the current theme, which was trying to rebuild a default theme, 2017. And this was actually early on. I think it was even before Create Block Theme. It was just like the early on days of the site editor. And I'm like, I had a real kind of nostalgic feeling of that theme, because when I was teaching it to students, it was the default theme at the time. So every new WordPress install, students were using 2017, and I was teaching how to use it. And I was like, I want to learn the site editor in its early days. I'm going to rebuild the theme. So the facelift is, I want to rebuild the site, and I want to take people on that journey in a very similar way that I did with that post about rebuilding it, but make it more video centric. I don't have a great vision for the total outcome yet, other than I'm very much inspired by, again, my history and visual rhetoric, Edward Tufte, and Tufte CSS. Very clean, minimal, find a way to bring a facelift to the site, but take people on the journey.
I promised you no hot seat questions, but I do have a hot seat question as we wrap up here. I just saw this comment come through on my channel from a viewer, and they asked, should I, and it was on my talking about the 2025 theme upcoming, and they said, is there any reason why I should use this theme over maybe, I think he posted like Cadence or whatever, like other pro themes or whatever. And this is something that I've always been challenged with, and I'm hoping for your thoughts on this, is we give up on these default themes, I think, too quickly for WordPress, where, there's all these features, like a new theme comes, and then, WordPress is constantly iterating and evolving. Gutenberg's getting better. So you start to see like, new theme comes out 6 months later. There's like this cool new feature that actually, oh yeah, this looks great with this default theme. And then we only have like a short few months after that, and there's already this new theme coming out, and it's just like that I think is a challenging aspect of WordPress to get people on board, because there's no stability in that, in my opinion, right? Because you launch a site, you get committed to this site, and then suddenly you're like, wait, WordPress is rolling, because a lot of people think this is a new version. Like they think that, oh, like there's a new version of WordPress, it's this theme. Should I be using this? And I think that there should be a core theme. This is the question. I think there should be a core theme that is just evolved. And I understand they want to flex the muscle of design and flexibility, but I think there should be like this core theme, and then you can adopt these yearly themes or these annual themes if you want. So that's the question. What are your thoughts? Do we keep these default themes around a little bit longer? Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, one of the past State of the Words, I remember, and I don't know if you recall this, Matt, saying like maybe there will only be one theme, right? Because of the site editor, you can make any theme you want, really. Like that's the direction that, Gutenberg and the site editor are heading. And I've just been thinking about this personally over the, last, year or two, is what is the value offered by themes in general in the future going forward? And I think your video I was just watching about patterns, I think that's it. I think patterns and designs are the new thing to offer through themes, because really like themes are going to be working a lot in the same way, but there's going to be some nuances to like, the core code of the theme, like theme.json, that maybe, you can't do in the site editor yet, such as, different hover styles or block styles or group styles. So I think there's going to be just from my perspective on just themes in general, not just the default theme, is that bringing new patterns and new ways to use the site through design is probably the future of WordPress themes. And have, maybe in the future, each new iteration of the default theme is just going to shift in how it's communicated, right? Because you're right. Like, there's so many past versions of default themes that you might still really enjoy, and you like the design of it. And like we talked about earlier, it's hard to change a site, right? To pick a new design and go with something different.
Yeah, for sure. Derek Hanson, he's a technical account manager at Automattic, and he's creating his own content at derekhanson.blog. Derek, thanks for hanging out today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Matt.